right, on to item 8.
Item 8 is a resolution authorizing the acting city manager to purchase three 2023 Chevrolet Tahoe sport utility vehicles for the police department.
So the three vehicles here are actually vehicles that we're able to get our hands on now. The vehicles, everybody's noticing that GM, Ford, and everybody went on strike. So we found these vehicles and were able to identify them. They do not have any lights in them or any of the police service package. They are police package vehicles, meaning that they are pursuit rated, but they are not outfitted yet. We will put the outfitting on it out of existing monies in the capital project, so it won't exceed that budget. Some of the things in part of the plan that actually got this here, so this, unless you want me to wait for questions, Roy, I'm going to try to answer all your questions up front, but I don't know if I will. So 3 years ago, we really implemented a program where we're going to start purchasing 3 replacement vehicles for the police department a year. And while that was like basically the baseline minimum that we can do, you will recall that when I first got here, about 40% of our fleet was out at any given time due to the age and mileage of the vehicles. So there were numerous times a week where officers were doubling up in cars. So instead of having 5 cars out on patrol, you would have 2 officers in 2 cars, in effect only having 3 vehicles out on patrol, reducing the actual number of vehicles patrolling the city. And a car would be, instead of just doing post-Adam, it might be doing Adam and boy at the same time, which is something that we wanted to avoid. So since this is our 3rd year of actually purchasing the vehicles, these will be the 7th, 8th, and 9th vehicles that we've purchased in that time on that program. Our rate of being out of service is hovering in around the 10 to 15% range. So what that actually means is when we had the older vehicles, we would need more vehicles in the fleet because we had to have more cars as backups because of the frequency that the older cars were breaking. Just since my time here, we've replaced at least 4 motors and transmissions, not including front ends, differentials, rear ends, and things like that, just to keep the fleet in service. Those issues are starting to rapidly diminish now because the age of the fleet is newer. They require much less repair. So these 5 vehicles are going to take 5 vehicles that exist right now, push them down into the fleet to be utilized for non or less emergencies, so they're not going to be on patrol as much. These vehicles will be taking the place of those. And then we'll push other vehicles out into the city so that non-emergency, more, you would say casual use of the vehicle can get these things to complete end of life. Your vehicles in the police service, they get involved in pursuits, they get involved in chases, they get involved in all sorts of things that are very taxing on the vehicle. So in essence, the purchase of these 3 vehicles, we're going to reduce our fleet by 5. So a net decrease of 2 will result out of this because we're finally able to start to decrease the size of our fleet because we no longer need as many spares.
I'm sorry, I missed that part. I understand you have the 3, we're able to move 5 down. But
right.
Eventually, does that the 5 are going out, or you say 2 are going out?
So 2 are going to leave the fleet, 5 are going to be, total of 5 vehicles are going to be moved in the fleet. 2 are going to leave, 3 are going to leave the fleet based on these. 2 additional vehicles are going to leave. So 5 will leave our fleet in entirety, 3 will come in.
So we're going to have 5 less vehicles.
We're going to have 2 total less vehicles in net.
Yeah, because
5 will come out of the fleet. Net reduction will be 2.
And do you know offhand how many vehicles we have in the fleet? I thought it was 70.
I don't recall off the top of my head. It's hovering around 70, so this will push us down into the upper 60s.
And what's our ultimate goal? Do you know?
So that's going to eventually come. It's hard to predict, right? So if we stay on the course that we are now, the entirety of the fleet wouldn't get replaced for a decade, well over 2 decades. But the patrol fleet is what's most important. So we can get a lot longer use out of a vehicle by taking it off of patrol and using it as specialty vehicles or as special vehicles or as just transporting things. So there's a lot of other uses that we have for cars.
Well,
So
that's-
I'm assuming that our fleet should balance out someplace around 60.
60.
Someplace, what's that the assumption is, if we continue the 3 vehicle replacement, into the future. Yes, so it would be a reduction. I think the total number of fleet that we had, the highest, was about 73, and we're down in the 60s now. So if it keeps on going, we'll be able to keep reducing, which also saves us on insurance and everything else. So
And
it's
everything
a very
else,
good
yes.
thing.
And the last question, how many patrol vehicles do we have?
So you mean on the street at any given time?
No,
Or,
how many do we have? I mean, we're replacing 3 a year, so,
Mike, do you happen to know how many are actually marked? 12 marked vehicles. So, and they typically last, the manufacturer recommends 3 to 4 years. We typically get 5.
4 years for a vehicle.
Yeah, because they run all day long. So, and we've increased the number of patrol vehicles that we have actually out there. We're able to actually, and with the start of the new contract, we should be fielding, we're hoping, 6 cars on a regular basis instead of 5. So we're, increasing the number of vehicles that we have on patrol as well. But that doesn't include your supervisory vehicle, which we now will also have. So that would be a 7th vehicle on patrol. So most of our fleet would be out there, and the older vehicles, the ones that are 3 or 4 years old, would then start to become the backups to the newer cars, and you just keep rotating until you start to push them down lower in the fleet. It's just a way to manage your fleet to get the most you can out of your cars. There comes a point in time, which I've explained before, where it's way too expensive to keep a car on the road. We had one of our Tahoes that we had already put 2 engines and a transmission and rear end in it. You could have bought a new car for the amount of money that we kept on putting into it, so it didn't make any sense.
So Ron, these 3 are the only ones that need to be purchased this year?
No, we could probably use 9 or 10 vehicles, but we don't have the money for that.
Right.
So we stage everything to spread it out over time. So we have figured out that 3 vehicles every year
Right.
going
Okay.
forward will keep the fleet from the position where it was in when I got here, which cars hadn't been purchased in, I think it was 3 or 4 years they hadn't bought a new car. We were still using cars that were gifted to us from PDs down in Florida when I got here. They were given to us because they were no longer using it, and we used those cars for 6 years. We really, it was one of the reasons why the garage was so expensive to run, was because we were spending so much money maintaining these cars. It just made no sense. In the long term, it was costing us more money not to buy cars.